In this part of the life of Soren Kirkegaard, the Danish author and philosopher who left a very important imprint on the history of existential philosophy and religious existentialism, there is now we are in 1843 to 1845. In these years, he had published a lot of books and had written a lot in his own diary and was struggling with himself mostly. So everything was actually centered around finding out who he was and what he was doing and combining those sides of him that were both religious, ethical, aesthetical, being the person who had lived the life on the surface and in depth and circled around the ideas of irony, the repetition, and the angst in life, and in very deep ways with long speeches. But one of his most profound books were yet to come in 1845, Stages on the Way of Life. In that period, in his time, in 1843 to 45, he lived a kind of quiet life on the outside. There was not a lot of activity. He had already lost a relationship to Regina, even though he followed her life journey, but he was very much concentrated totally to develop his thoughts and build on the basic ideas he had from either or, the old story where he has A and B unfolding the ways of life, and then later that guy who was reading it to try to give a kind of idea on it. He went to a trip to Berlin, though, in May 1843, and then later the third trip in 1845, a short one. He still went for his walks in the town of Copenhagen, still within the limits of the what's called Volden, the surrounding protectionist area. And sometimes he went on the other side of the walls of Copenhagen, the king's city, and went from the islands of went from inside the center city out to the area just outside it, which is now part of the central Copenhagen near the Planetarium and the Little Triangle. And so sometimes he sat in cafes and talked to people. Other times he just went out for a short walk and lived most privately, actually, mostly in contact with his friend Emil Boasen and some of his nieces and nephews, whom he gave a lot of presents and talked very fondly to. So they liked him a lot and also remembered him later in some of their reflections on his life and when he visited them. Occasionally he still took that drosk and the carriage that costed a lot of money to have these long trips, like 20 kilometers outside the town, sometimes up to 30 or 40 kilometers, and to get away from everything in town and all the ideas in his mind and all the writings that could go on for hours and hours in his own home. And so, like basically once a week, he went out to do something else in that year, or 1844 to 1845. And one other thing that happened to him was that he bought back he went back to his father's house on Kongens Nytorv number 2, and well, the house was a shared house between him and his brother, but then he took the house over from him and took care of it for several years until he sold it in 1848 for a very fine sum of money. And so his life was actually, in a way, in a quite personal way, going in its tracks, and he's totally focusing on what he liked, using the luxuries of life that he had, a lot of money, the eats, the walks, the talks to people, but mostly concerned in that deep side of him that he could not get to, that jump that he needed to face and do in order to become whole, to become himself totally. So he was still on the way, explaining all of this and using a lot of beautiful words and ideas, and as usual using the theatrical personalities that he put up in these writings, so people could like live it like it was a scene. But it's a very heavy and deep scene. It's not like one of these cheap theater scenes where people are not saying anything really, but it's very deep, and it's talks from from sides of life that is called philosophy. It's a deep thinking of life and reflecting it in many ways. And so, in the midst of all that, he delivered one of his big books that's really also hard to get around, also explaining, called Stages on on the Way of Life from 1845. It's actually based on the same idea as the old books, three persons talking in different ways. Here he has chosen three persons talking, and the book was published by a person who he called Hilarius, the bookbinder. And so again, a pseudonym, and hiding behind these names, maybe to keep himself in distance from the book's content, and at the same time give the reader freedom to just jump into the text without thinking about the author. And so it's a kind of continuous thought process from either or. But this time he unfolds A's and B's ideas even more, this time with three names. And so it's like he's putting it all in such a beautiful construction that, these papers were kind of talks that is in three parts. And the first part he called In Vino Veritas, in wine you find the truth. And from the title we already can see that it's actually more in the wine you lose your mind, and then everybody see who you are. This is the person living on the surface, the aesthetic person who is very shallow and has to hide himself behind both the wine and the empty talk and the pleasures that is in that level of life. And the second part is about it's called on different aspects of marriage against the protests. And so it's like a defense writing for marriage, for the ethical life, the life of that person we also had already knew in B's papers, the person who defends the duty for love more than the love itself and the unfolding of it. And so he goes in deep with this one. But the most important part in that book that is really new and very much elaborated as well is the third part called Guilty or Not Guilty. And it's a part where he has this person called Frater Taciturnus, who has been meeting with the others, he has taken from the assessor Wilhelm. And so this Frater Taciturnus is talking about how he sees both sides of life as they have been presented in the first and second part. And so he is saying that I found a guy who has been called Quidam, it means like the wise one. He found a book and the writing from him where he has been looking into some ideas, and this is what he relates to his friends in that party that they were going about talking about love and romantic and girls and the easy life. And later they went to visit that assessor Wilhelm and his wife, or went by and could see how well organized their life was. And then there was a writing from this assessor Wilhelm that Frater Taciturnus he got his hands on, and so he saw the opposite picture of the first ideas that they got in Vino Veritas. And now we are in the third idea, that this Quidam is actually talking about, different aspects of both marriage and going outside it, but also being guilty or not guilty. So it's taking us into deep from the aesthetic over the ethic into the religious aspect that he really wants to get to, and he really wanted to dwell on in big ways. It's a little bit difficult to get around, but I will try, and I hope it will become clear, because I'm not sure it's even clear enough when you tell it. You have sometimes to read it, and if you read it, you will get lost, because there is all these names and there are all these small passages, because between the parties, there is three parts in the book. Between them, he had put in some kind of plays or some kind of ideas that unfolds in between all these things that makes it also a bit more difficult and complicated to relate to. So it's a work that needs time to understand and to be given a lot of time, but it's also a beautiful work where he unfolds the language and the phrases in a different way. It's like you can have these long talks and praising of marriage and why it's good and how it's lived and so on. And we have in the first part these in Vino Veritas group who are been drinking and talking about women and the easy life and the sensuality, and they're giving their aspect of it, as I'm gonna in short retell here. But it's also a book that is really unfolding in that way. And so we get to the last part where the digging into his depth is becoming really, really more very, very tough in many ways. It's difficult to relate to and to understand also, but this is his whole project, to get to this depth and to leave the surface and to go and somehow understand like a kind of exceptional life and to be an exception in life. This is maybe what he wanted to, and we can sometimes guess it has something to do with his ego and self-centered mind and the way he was looking at himself as the center of the universe in many ways. But still, it gives us a lot of understanding of the modern human being that was to come. So he was like really a carbon paper on existence, and how many people would go in later times really dwelling on what's wrong with them and their choices, and how to get rid of the guilt and how to overcome the angst and how to live with what you have chosen, and was the choice correct, and can you do it again, or can you change it, and which lifestyle is the better one. And it's very beautiful when it unfolds like that, because we can see it in our eyes as it was going to unfold later in those times. Remember, we were in the 1800s, that life was pretty much traditional in many, many ways, and people were just bound into the same way of living generation after generation. That does not mean there hasn't been any romantic people and people who went on escapades, or people who went wrong or found themselves, but it has never been expressed so clearly and deeply as we reach to with his words. So I believe in every generation of humans there has been people like him and different than him, trying really to go out of the tradition and to find some uniqueness and to get in touch with that uniqueness and get lost in it. But what's profound here is that we get to learn more about it in words. It's like the thoughts and the feelings and the way of life becomes more visible to us through these words and explanations and expressions. And that's what makes it so exciting to relate to try to see yourself in it. Unfortunately, it's so many pages. I don't know, 400 or 500 pages, depends on the printing. But it's so many pages and so much talk and so many personalities that he could have used a kind of editor to tell him, well, let's make this a little bit easier to get to. And so even though he has a clear mind that's very focused on the writing, also in the previous ones, he can also, like many philosophers and writers, just take a turn here and take a turn there and then go into some kind of exploration and then get back. And so if you're not used to that kind of language, you will get lost. So unfortunately, also for ordinary people, both the language, the choices, and the personalities that's been used there, the characters, and the explorations in different issues can sometimes make you get lost. And that's why we think, well, this is a philosopher. He deserved the branch on the tree. We others, we are on the ground. It doesn't really matter what we are reading. And why we should read it at all or listen to it. That's why I'm trying like to give a sense of what it is, to understand it myself first and foremost, and to get into depth in some aspects of it. And you can do that best by telling it or retelling it or trying to explain it to somebody. And this is what I'm fictionally trying here, to just put it out there. Whoever with some kind of interest could maybe also find his way through to these texts or just get around some of the ideas. So let's go to the book. Stages on the way of life, which is one of his most profound and very much also mentioned and quoted books. And in the first part we have, well, it's about wine, women, song, pleasures, in Vino Veritas. He is imitating somehow the Symposium of Platon, who is explaining to us in the old Greek times that Socrates and other men met to party and drink and give some speeches to each other about love and erotics and the lust that's in between them. And they mention the gods, and they mention the mythology, and they mention different aspects of life and people. So he has already grasped that inspiration that, well, you can look into people's life and some kind reflected in some words that really explains who they are or what they are occupied by. So this talk is about the love, and it's a group of people with a one young man who seems very innocent, naive. We called Constantine, and we know the name from before. And then we have a guy who has invited them in and is also known for us, Victor Eremita. And this guy, he's the one who is gathering these people to talk about the different issues. He was also the same name who talked about the repetition earlier. And so he has also the guy Johannes, the seducer, with him. And this was the guy that appeared in the early stage talking about how to indulge in living and seduce women. And he has a long speech about it. So a lot of aspects, when you read this, you will find, well, yeah, we can see that in real life. This is what's important and interesting. He is putting this forward. It's not hidden anymore. And so these people are talking while drinking, and well, in vino veritas, you will find the truth when people drink, but maybe you will be finding that they get out of their minds and thereby reveal the truth about themselves. This is a more close idea than only revealing the truth in what people are saying. It's like they're showing how shallow they are and how different they can be. So this young man has really not much to say. As beautiful world, he is still unexperienced with life and the love, and well, he can see it as a kind of contradiction, full of contradiction. It's more comical than anything else for him, but still, it is love and it's exciting, and he liked the idea in different manners as a reflection, the love, the woman, the heat of that love, and the way of being with there. With somebody that you get the lust for. So it's like, it's not about love, but it's about the idea and how to just try it out in some way. Well, when he finished in his very youngish way of explaining this, this guy Constantine, he takes over and was really more in depth thinking about the erotic experiences that he has been through with women, and the categories they have, and what kind of ideas they have on the woman and their nature, and how they seem to be in his eyes as an experienced person. And so it's like there is the absolute woman, the relative woman, and the woman between the two in the eyes of this guy. So he's putting some poles out, and so he says it's all some kind of a big joke, a big enjoyment, or just a big way out of what things should be. It's a distraction for the man, and so it's a kind of just some kind of surface craziness in many ways, even though it's beautiful and it's attractive. But he will reveal himself as leaving the life of the spirit that this man should have been risen to. And that provokes, or what can you say, makes Victor Eremitas, the third guy, speaks. This time he is not really on the same page, but still talking more gallantly and romantic. And he does not agree in this. He's a little provocated by that idea. He sees the woman as an ideal. She is the most high and beautiful thing in the world that can inspire the man and can give him happiness. And she can be the one that can really make him do things and build a lot in his life. And she seems sometimes not reachable so high, and sometimes leave the man in an unhappy love that can be the result of it. It's not easy to be left behind by a woman, but it's the price to pay for such a beauty, a romantic art, as he would like to say it. And so in many ways we can here see the story of Soren Kierkegaard himself, his lost love, the different ways he have been thinking about women or seeing others expressing these things. And so he say, well, anyhow, this Victor Eremita, he say, well, it's like being a man is to try to become something, and the girl can be the negative side of that. So in many ways, the girl can be the reason why a man can become something special, because, well, because of that relationship or the loss of that relationship with her. And there's one more present. He is really more more on the shallow side. He just seeing the beauty on the outside, the surface, what we call the mode, the way of the woman presenting himself, becoming seducing and deceiving in many ways. And so he explains that for him it's about the outside beauty that the woman can show and uphold on that aesthetic plan that becomes the playground for the man and becomes the important thing that he or circles around. And so it's a duty for every man to get this woman to have this crazy and affecting self-reflection that will change everything in him and around him. And so by that, he will say, well, this mature lady will come out of this. It's a kind of development, a consequence that you will have. Otherwise, you will go crazy. So you need to get the woman to the situation where she is mature, and she can be there as in a kind of, and he called it a still ongoing nonsense. That this nonsense will make you go more and more crazy about it, or about her, or about the life with her. And so they are in different directions here, talking about their way of thinking of women, and some of it seems cynical and seems just part of a very, what can you say, manly looking way into the woman. But it's so beautiful, strong, that he is daring put it forward to us as if real men were talking like this. And yeah, real men will be talking like this, especially when they've been drinking and sitting in places where they think nobody is hearing them, or maybe they will just think that this is the way to think about women. And so here, this guy, Johannes the seducer, he says, well, everything you others have been saying is not really to be taken seriously. And he say it's because you people are some unhappy lovers. You would like to change the woman, and has forgotten the most important way to look at her, enjoyment. And so he want to love the love itself, and to love the seduction, and to make the woman that bait that he is going to run after and gain. And so the love for him is only for those most beautiful and untouched flowers, that is actually the target for him. And he is certainly against both marriage and against any kind of engagement, because it's about the seduction that is erotic. This is the goal, and this is the most important thing. And so you have to be able to live that deceivement and enjoy it, and do not be touched by it. And that's only something an erotic minded person can understand, he says. Well, to feel being seduced, that is something of a grace, he says. And here they end their talk looking at women from different perspectives that can be very maybe shocking, or maybe disturbing, or maybe something that provokes reactions in anyone reading this. Who are these persons? Why are they speaking like that? But at the same time, everybody reading this and have some experience in life, they can see these pictures of what's going on in the heads of these males, and how they are on the shallow side of looking on different ways on women. So it's very much also a part of realizing that many people, and there can be some, looking at life like this. And so after that party, and the meeting, and still, well, there is the walk. The night is long, and later, closer to the dawn, they leave their place of partying, and they try to get out on the countryside to get some fresh air. And so they stop by a landside there with a romantic place and a garden and a beautiful house, as if it was like the presentation of the erotic theme of the evening. But then they find that it's Assessor Wilhelm, that guy we have met before, who is for the marriage, and his wife, living happily, easily, and traditionally, like only few can, newly married and living there in that house. And well, they try to get by because they do not want to be met by his critique, or show their face in front of him as those people who are living very easily and on the surface and just moving from one direction to another. And so they try to get on, but Victor Eremita, he tries to get into the head building and find that manuscript that he will later use and put it in the picture. It's like he's taking the manuscript of this guy Quidam, the wise person, from Assessor Wilhelm, the guy who is for the ethics and for the duty in the marriage and love, and the traditional way of being together with a woman and enjoying love like that. And there is some guy who had written him something. This guy is called Quidam, and this Victor Eremita, who is part of that In Vino Veritas group, he has taken that manuscript and put it in his pocket. He's gonna read it later, and he's gonna look into it in different ways. And so we can see that in this manuscript there is this guy who is Takinitos, the guy we mentioned earlier, who is actually speaking in the second part. So this is something he's going to talk about now, the second part, which is a lot of argument against this freestyle living. It's a kind of the second part of Stages on the Way of Life, as Kierkegaard wants to show us. And this is the good citizens, the happy man, the happy woman, the love that is bound by duty. And it's about a praise for the marriage and the happy, quiet life. And he's been writing about this. And so Victor Eremita, who has been part of that group, he's going to read in it and later discuss it. And so we will have the third part come in later over that Quidam, the wise man, looking at things from a third perspective. And this is mostly the new thing we're going to get here. But well, this second part about the marriage and opposition to ideas against it is in a way a no to the eros and the easy living and for the ordinary happiness that you can get in life. And so he's like giving argument after argument to try to explain that, well, the marriage is so important. It's the central part of life. It's more than just a love story or a contact between person. It is a kind of pact. It's an agreement. You truly also confirm your belief in God by going into that marriage. It's so close to be holy as anything can be, because this is what gives the humans the fundament of life. And it's not such a coincidence that you just go around wasting it right and left and looking at it the way these people in the first part have been looking at it. And so the highest goal in life is really to meet this way of thinking with a practical life where you can go into that human relation of living together with someone. It's a whole life story. It's an idealism. It's a kind of idyllic situation you can get in. And so he gives us this big praise in this second part about love in the marriage and not outside it. And so he goes and talks about the two sexes and the the marriage between them and the beautiful synthesis that can come out of them. And when man and woman meet, they are not two, but they become three. And that union is really a way of gaining that story of life, which life wouldn't have been good without it. It's the kind of the the picture of the ideal way of also dividing the roles between them, where the woman has her to take care of and the man has his, and they are in between that in a kind of praise for each other's roles and engagement here. So yeah, happiness and beauty is not really that. It's the it's really to go into that duty of marriage and live in it, and this is what will give happiness and peace. So this is the second, more traditional way of looking at it, and that the one that has been dominating also in life for many centuries, maybe not all time, but has been dominating. And so here he stands between the first view and the second one. And so he has to look at all this. And it is like he's like distorted between and divided between that duty to God and that pact that could be in a marriage if he had taken that girl he loved, Regina, and should have. Thereby he could have fulfilled his ethical duty and his life as it should have been. And then at the same time in himself, it's like he's looking at the exception of this and cannot get by feeling guilty because he has also lived the life as these four persons were describing. The easy life, the seducing life, the life where the woman does not have that kind of picture in the man's life as this Assessor Wilhelm. And the second part is telling us about it's a kind of very different life that these people are engaging in, and he has been there as well and has listened to their talk and seen it and engaged in it, as we have been told. We've been talking about in earlier talks about his life. So it becomes a story of suffering deeply, a psychological experiment, and he has to deal with it. He has to like find the deeper meaning in all this and get to the depths of it. And this is what the third part of this book, Stages on the Way of Life, is actually trying to tell us. It's between these ideas about the religious and the ethical and the aesthetical. And so what is this religious all about? Because now we have seen what these two others is really wanting to show us, or maybe give us of pictures in life, but there is a third way. And it's like he's trying to talk to himself about guilty, not guilty. Have I been guilty? Or am I not guilty? And what makes my guilt show, and what makes me not guilty, if that is possible at all? And he's trying to be deeply honest, and it has been a really big project for him to go so far, using himself so much in this story. And he does it like to build up this story using the voice of that guy Quidam, the diary of Quidam, and the Frater Taciturnus, who had been taking the papers from Victor Eremita. And so he gives them the idea to talk about it. And this Quidam has like his diary reflecting on life in the same way, but in different ways than has been before. It's like a morning reflection and midnight reflection. It's like he's remembering the love story, the engagement, the breaking up, this Quidam. We can see it's himself he's talking about here, and reflecting in many ways. But at the same time, in the night times, when he's writing his diary in the night, there is 44 diaries from the morning and 44 midnight diaries. And so it's like in the midnight, he will show that, well, he's growing beyond it, and he's changing, and he's leaving space for that growth to, as he says, want to out free the religious part. He want to get it out. He want to become it. It's like he want to give it birth in many ways. So we see that he's this Quidam, or himself in the third part actually, is between the whole story repeated, the love story, the engagement, the regret, the breakup, and the scenes that's around this breakup, and how to make it work, and how to also try to get out of the things and the breakup and the worries in it, whatever is built on that reflection, resignation, guilt that starts to come up, the angst. And so a lot of things happens in between the love story and the breakup that has given him a lot of inner trouble, and that makes him ask guilty or not guilty. And so it's a kind of very deep and personal uh, reflection he's giving us in many ways. And so he wants to be forgiven, forgive a human that, if anything, tried but did not got able to make a girl happy. So we can see it means a lot to him. It's the love story of his life and his choices, with it or against it, that he is actually setting into motion here in this part of the story, and leading himself to become that person who looks at it from a very special position as the religious position, the religion, the position of belief. And so we can see when he's in this midnight talking, this quidam, he be in his doubt, having this heavy mind and guilt, and in there and from there, the religious feeling will spire and becomes bigger and stronger, because this is the way out of all this, to accept the jump into that, as we talked before, the passion of believing and leaving yourself to that, and that would be the way out. So by that you will become total. You will become the one who had been freeing himself from the broken relationship and from the broken promises and from the deceivement of yourself and others. And this is what he's trying in this third part. If it's anything else he's doing, it's like he said, well, this is some of the richest I have ever written, and it's difficult to understand because it's a kind of natural egoism that is against to uphold the sympathy so strong. Difficult to get around what he really wants to say in these few words. But you can say that if you want to look into it, guilty, not guilty, the jump, and then, well, his loneliness that can be bridged by receiving that religious understanding in his life, the faith that will bring him out of the whole condition that he has been in. And so getting out of that suffering in the end. And we can see here it's very much about his life experiment he wanted to put an end to, and he wanted to, in a way, put behind him by writing all this and bringing us to that conclusion that, well, this guy Quidam is not the same. He is still living that vita ante acta, the life as he has tried it before, but he has a very special personality, and he's now experimenting this way out of this psychological suffering that he has been in. And the suffering is because he is very much split also between the conscience from that ethical man in him. So look at it as if this assessor Wilhelm is also part of him. It's himself that has been on that stage, and it's himself writing it. He's writing a whole defense for the ethical life, and he knows it inside him. And in the beginning, he was writing about how to view women in a more light and easygoing way, as life on the surface would be like. The aesthetic, the sensual life would be viewing women as a source of enjoyment and a source for mature way of showing off, or whatever these persons has been talking about before. He can see all that, and he is reflecting it in himself. And so this discussion is basically inside him all the time. He's talking to himself and arguing one thing and the other at the same time. But now he wants a way out, and he wants to find his way out, and answering his question whether he's guilty or not. And so he sees himself as that kid walking into a quiet despair, and he sees himself like, he puts a story in about Solomon, the dream that, well, he sees his father as the ungodly man who is being chosen because he was not accepted by God, given to be king and all that, because he wasn't good enough in God's eyes. And so he wakes up from that dream in the story of Solomon. That's Solomon that's waking up from that very scary dream that is very opposite as things should have been. And there's a lot to explain into that, and also see into the life story of anyone that maybe what he is seeking is not the right thing. It's the opposite thing. And so after letting this Quidam speak in length and telling these stories and ideas and reflections on a deeper level, he gave the last word to that guy, Frater Taciturnos, to say, well, let me look at all this Quidam story and what he's been writing about the unhappy love story and how he has done with this. And so we end this book by reading ourselves into a kind of reflection that he's giving on his three positions, and the position of Quidam, that guy who is really trying to get out of the guilt feeling. And so this Tatirnikos, well, he says this, it's deeply, the tragedy is that two people do not understand each other. That's a tragedy. And the comically is that two people who do not understand each other, once again, he said the tragic of it is that two persons who do not understand each other can love each other. But the comic side is that two persons who do not understand each other can love each other. And so we have these two positions that can be tragic. Two who are in love but do not understand each other, so they can't get together. It ends tragically. And on the opposite side, it's two persons who do not understand each other but are loving each other. And that's comical to see that, well, how can they be in love if they are not in understanding? And so this conflict of love is very clear in this Quidam's figure. And this is what Tatirnikos is really looking into. He's explaining for us that this Quidam, well, is blocked. That demonic figure in him that is afraid of looking into who he really is and choosing himself, because he's afraid of it. And actually, he's afraid of the good thing. The good thing is to choose yourself and become who you are and accept it, but he can't. And so that becomes the demonic run away from what is good. And so he feels the guilt and the anger, but the only thing he can find himself growing into is the religious life, to get rid of that story of suffering, the existential suffering. And it is the religious healing that he is seeking here. It's like the forgiveness of the God and the forgiveness of the one he loved in the same time. And so it's like to get out of that eternal inner quarrel with yourself and troublesome situation that he is trying to give us here. And so it's like he says, well, love in itself is very difficult, because he says it's very strongly touched to the individual. It's a kind of romantic expression of feelings that is very much attached to the person himself. And so it's like some kind of self-centered expression that is concerned with the individual himself. At the same time, it is bound to some kind of thoughts and ideas and responsibilities and arrangement towards the other side of it. And so it becomes almost like impossible. It's caught in an impossible net that's taken it in two different and very uneasy directions. And so this guy, Taciturnos there, he's also criticizing Quidam for so much self-reflection. He is talking about his guilt so much that he's become very heavy of it and get this heavy mind. He shouldn't be doing so. Remember, all this is the same Kierkegaard talking in many voices. So it's like there are many layers of him here talking, and he ends up with this Tatirnikos, stop blaming yourself and stop suffering under this. But there's only one thing you need to do, and that's to take that jump into the religious freedom that he wants to find his way into, to the way into the life with God, the passion in that God that can maybe, not maybe, but for sure, bring him back to himself and bring him out of that suffering with the love story and himself at the same time. And so Kierkegaard is actually in some way also using these voices to say, well, I might be an exception. Most people will be in the first or second category, and some will be like this Quidam. But the exception is to try and get out of it all, take the jump and free yourself from it all. But it takes that faith, and you need to get over the angst as well. And so he says, sometimes I feel it's like I am best needed when there is crisis. It's like his whole life is a kind of carbon paper that reality is using to make it understandable. And this is a beautiful thing to say, and at the same time tragic. It's like he's saying, I've never lived like the others, really, and that's because reality is using me to explain itself. Whatever you will do of that, and that's a deep thing to say. I think I will leave it here because this is a great expression to end on.